All right, I want to go over a little bit more with the environment, just so you can get an idea of the next stages, kind of where we're going with this a bit further. Also, obviously, going through the sheet so we know what's due and what to expect. Stylized environment. The due date's going to be the 12th of October. We're going to be doing a movie and a still. The movie's going to take some time, so we will have, again, some overlap between this assignment and the next one. Working with Cinema 4D to better understand navigation, cameras, modeling, shaders, and cloning. Building a low poly environment on a floating island. Ensure the geometry looks solid and materials look appropriate. So if we're doing like a tree, it looks like a tree. It doesn't look like a blob, basically, right? Same thing with the materials. It's not like orange for the ground for whatever reason. Use of cloners to duplicate props for animation purposes. Animating a camera slowly moving towards the island. Animating via effectors and fields. The pieces floating away and disappearing, or vice versa. So we don't want them to just like the trees, let's say, to lift up off the ground and kind of float there. We want them to actually disappear. So it feels like the world is either being built or being destroyed, okay? And then organizing, effective shading, and lighting. You'll turn in your research, so any images you grab from Pinterest that you're going to be utilizing, any images you've sketched out and drawn that you're like planning on building. And then you'll turn in your movie, which is obviously going to be your rendered sequence, put into After Effects, made into a movie, and then you'll have a still image, and then you'll also turn in your cinema file, okay? I don't need the rendered sequence, so when it renders out and it renders out all those individual frames, I don't need all the individual frames. That's just to make the movie. It's way too much space, so I just delete those anyway. Your turn-in will be a 10-second movie, 24 frames per second at 960 by 540. We'll have a still image that's 3000 by 2400. If you look in the showcases out there, some of the previous semesters, we have some environments we've done. That resolution here is an 8 by 10 rendering, basically. We can go a little bit bigger, but those are 8 by 10. If I were to take this one here and try to render it out, print it that size, and then, it would look horrible because it would stretch out the pixels. So we want to have a high-res rendering also. I don't know what that is, just floating. This is where 16 points, and there we go. Cool. So this will be in the book. I'm going to print it. Copy. Any questions on the sheet? No? Okay. For this environment here, there's the stuff. Again, the idea is that everything could come off or go back on. The video that I have on Canvas for the past semester, the mountains are actually built separately and show those going off and coming back on too. Here, the mountains are locked in, so the mountains wouldn't move in this case, but everything else would. The idea with all of these is that they are being cloned some way so that we can animate them. So if I go into the cloner and I go to my effectors, right now they just have a random position, just so they're not all bunched together. But if I go to a plane, think of this just like our text when we got the text to disappear or go on the screen. Let's put this to 2000, maybe that's good. Yeah, that should be good. Then I'm going to go to my fall off. I'll go to my linear field. So this is what I would use to obviously animate the stuff going from position A to position B. And then I would scale things down until they're -1, so they're all scaled and tiny. And then as my camera moves through this from right now at this point, you can see how I can get those trees to disappear. Or if I'm going the other way, get them to come back in. Okay? Now, this is important because everything that we build needs to have some way to get off the screen and some way to get on the screen. Some things we may only want one of, okay? And so we want to build that into our system so we can do that kind of stuff. So I'm going to build, I said I was going to build like a wigwam teepee type thing. So I'm going to build that real quick. So I'm going to go into my cone. It's a good starting shape. Anytime we build anything at all ever, typically I never move it away from the origin. If you keep it right at the origin, it makes your life easier because then the pivots are right there. Everything is kind of centralized. If I were to build I'm not going to use it for this one, but let's say I'm going to build a sphere and put it on top of it, it's right there. I don't need to like move it over and put it on top. It's just all right there, self-contained. All right, so there's the starting point of this. I'm going to go to my slice. And I don't think I want a cap on this, so I'm going to turn caps off. There we go. I'm going to reduce, it's hard to see on the screen, I'm going to reduce my segments here. And reduce these segments. There we go. So that looks pretty good like that. Maybe I'll go a little bit less on the slice. So 60. 70. Let's try that and see. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to also put a stick in here. That's what would hold the TP up. I'm going to go into my divisions. You'll see how I'm lowering the divisions on all of these purposefully so that it looks low resolution. It looks low polygon. Give this a little bit of rotation. Oops. That way. Scoot this over here. Notice how my arrow is pointed at this weird angle. Because I rotated it, it rotated my arrow tool. So I'm going to hit W, and notice how the arrow then swaps directions. Okay, so this one right here is aligning it to the object. So if I wanted to move it, let's say this direction, that's a lot easier to do when it's aligned to the object. When I want to move it just like left, I hit this, and now it's aligned to the world. So we'll see that several times throughout when we get these things that we want to align that way. So I'm going to put this over here. I need to shrink the height of this. Okay, so now here's an instance where I want to move it to the object, so I'm going to hit W and then move that along. And then go back to that dot and shrink it down. And then I'm going to rotate it some more. And then hit W again. You'll see me just kind of get it roughly positioned there. All right, and then maybe a little bit thinner. Cool. All right, so now I have my stick there. I have this. I'm going to take these and I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to go to my cloner. And then I'm going to just change my cloner from linear to radial, change the direction, and then just adjust how many clones I have. I think I only want like 3 of these, and I want this to be a smaller radius. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my transform and just rotate this until I get it looking the way that I think it should look. Maybe even a little bit of transform in the Z. Yep, there we go. Rotation. All right, now I can go back to my original cone and then just adjust that slice and get that to line up. There we go. So there's no opening in this, and that's fine. I'll leave it like that. But now that kind of looks like a TP type structure. I'm going to copy my materials, just rename this to TP there. I'd imagine they would use the same wood, so I'll just assign this wood to the cylinder, and then I'll assign my TP material to the cone, and then I'll give this a lighter color here. Oops, there it is. I don't need the colorizer for this really, because these will all be the same, so I'm just going to clear this, and then just choose this tan color for that. That's good. Cool. So I'm going to go to this cloner. This plane right here, that's the plane that I used for my trees to get them to disappear. I'm going to use that same one for this one. So if I go to my cloner, which is now TP, and I go to effectors, and I drag this in there, now that plane effector will also be able to affect the TP. Okay, And you'll see how all the pieces disappear, right? So it's like each panel is basically like flying away. Now, that's a decision that I'm making as I build this as to how I want this to disappear. Right now, one panel and one stick are kind of like locked together because they're part of that same group. I could not have these grouped, and then they would be independent of each other. So if I were to take these two, drag them into here without the group, let me disable this one for now. There's my cone. Where's the other ones at? Let me go to my TP. Let me go to object. I'm just going to say, all right, let me move it out of there. There we go. All right, so there's my cylinder inside this TP group. Make sure the effector is turned off. Okay, it's not doing that. I don't know where the other ones went. Where are they at? Oh, that's the cylinder. That's why. So I turned it off, and that's why I can't see it. All right, there we go. All right, so there's my cylinder right there. Let me pull the cylinder out and put the cone in. That's what I wanted. There we go. Okay. So now the cone's in there. So now I'm going to go to my TP here, go to the transform. And I'm just going to basically reset this and reposition these things so that they're all back to being lined up where I wanted them. All right, there we go. So now the TP is all connected. Then I can duplicate this, delete the cone, and drop my cylinder in there. And now I'm going to line up the cylinders with that. So I'm going to go to my object, go to my transform. All right, there those are. I'm going to go and rotate. Nope. Yep, that's it there. Excuse me. There we go. And you'll see how I'm just playing with the different settings to get this to line up right. I'm also going to move that up. Oops. Let me move this up. There we go. I'll move that up. And I need to make my cylinder a bit bigger because I didn't realize it was underground. And you'll see how I'm just positioning this. Now, the way that I'm doing this one, I'll be able to animate each one of those pieces separately. So the stick and the covering will also move separately. Then I can go to that, maybe rotate this that far. All right, so that's pretty good there. I'm going to give the cylinders a little bit more height so they cross. Cool. Okay. So now I have this one and I have that one. So if I go to my plane field and I move this over, you'll see how they all separate move. Okay, now these are all moving together at the same time because they're all pretty much in the same spot. Once I add some randomness to this, then they won't. They'll all move separately. So that's good there. That's good there. Okay. So now what I can do is take these two, group those two together, and then add another cloner to the group. And then this is where I can set this one to be a grid, just like I did the previous one. And then change the dimensions of this so that I can have these things kind of scattered throughout. Oh, that one disappeared because my plane is still on. There we go. And I don't know much about Indian culture. I don't know if they would all be together or separate. I would assume somewhat together, but I'm going to put them separately. There we go. And then I'll add a randomness to this. So go to the effector, go to random, and adjust their random Y is going to be 0. The random position will be like that and like this. Okay, you might have some that intersect, and that's not a huge deal. I mean, obviously we can start adjusting some of these things just to see if we don't get any. But realistically, it's going to be very difficult to not get an intersection somewhere. The idea would be that we would just kind of show it where we don't see those things happening. Okay, so just ignore it if they do, and just find a spot where, you know, we're not, where would they go? Right here. So we're not right on top of this, like showing these two are intersecting. Okay. Now on this cloner here, I could also go to the effectors and also drop in that plane. And now when I turn this on, I'll get like a double movement on these. So there's the TPs right here. As I move this across, I'm going to get the TPs and the sticks and everything else kind of moving with it. Okay, so you can see the differences in how, as they're all together here, it's moving as one big chunk, where when they were grouped, connected together, it moved them all as 3 different individual panels. Okay, so something to consider as you're building your pieces. All right, now let's say that we have an item that we don't, let's see, TPs, that we don't want to clone. We only want one item of it. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to just put a, they wouldn't have a well, but I'm just going to put a well right here. Oops. So let's shrink this down. I also got to shrink the size of those TPs. They're like bigger than the trees. All right, so let's say just in the middle of this area, there's a well of something. Where's my other point? Right there. And then shrink that down, scoot this up. Okay. So I only want this one item, but I still want to be able to control it with this plane effector. On the tube itself, you'll see there is no effector area. There's nothing, or field area, there's nothing for me to connect. If I just put this into a cloner by itself, set the object to 1, and leave it at linear, well, now it has the effector area, and now I can drag that into here, and then I can go to the plane, and where'd you go? Right there. And now as I drag this across, whenever I get to the well, there he goes. Okay. So that's just that one item. I can do it if it's just like a solid item like that. If I wanted to build the well, like actually think of, you know, they wouldn't have poured concrete for this. They would have rocks or something. I could do that as well. So I can create some sort of rocky shape. So a cube. I'm going to shrink this down. And again, I'm keeping everything right at the origin. I'm not moving it away. I'm going to scale it. There it is. All right, so that's one brick, let's say. I'm going to add some divisions to this. So I'm going to go to, let's say, 3, 3, oops, let's say 4. That's good, and 2 there. Then I could do that same displacer that we had before. Oops. Click the displacer, click shading, go here, add noise. Okay, way too much noise, so I'm going to go back to my object, set this to, I don't know, 1. There we go. So that's a very rough looking rock. That's good. So I'm just going to convert that into a shape. Current state to object. Delete that. I may just go in here too and grab some of these points and just adjust them. Just to again give it kind of this look of being a little bit more low resolution kind of thing, but still look rough. Right, something like that. All right, that'll be good enough for this. All right, so now I'm going to take this, I'm going to do a cloner on it. Cloner, there we go. I'm going to set this to radial. I'm going to change the direction so it's XZ. I'm going to rotate 90 degrees. A lot more going this way. 1 less, 2 less. That's good. And then I'm going to clone this. And then set this to 10, 2, to less than that. 3.5, that's good. Give it a little bit of rotation, so, oops, not that way. 10 degrees, 25, there we go. And then every iteration of this will automatically stack it. And then I can have this. Now, if I was going to do a well where I had the little pieces of wood on top, the bucket area, that all would be separate pieces that, again, could be inside cloners so that they would move with it. As this, I'm just going to leave it like that. And on this effector, I'm going to go to, sorry, this effector. I'm going to drop in that plane. And now watch what happens. It should treat all of those as different layers. So as I get here, why haven't you left? Cloner 2, plane, yes, plane. Maybe I haven't gone far enough. There it goes. All right, so it's treating all those as the same thing. So if I go to this, I turn this off, and I drag the plane into the second or the first cloner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the individual bricks moving up. Okay, so where you place that will also go play a role. And again, you may have it on both of them. Try it out and see. That's the beauty of this, is that it's pretty simple to do if you have it set up right. I don't really like it on both of them. So I'm just going to take it off that one. Okay, and I may even rotate this some so it's not perfect, so it's like, you know, that, because that feels a lot more organic. Right? That's 10 times better than the previous one. Holy cow. And yes, sir.
So when you rotated that, is that just for the bricks?
That would do it for all of them. Yep. So then all of them will have that same kind of more organic feel. And I would actually not just use this linear field because it's straight. I may use a cylinder because I want it to feel like it's kind of like growing towards me or kind of spreading apart. Where with linear, it's just like one straight line. Okay. I use that just as an easy way to see on and off now. But at any point, I could just delete that linear field, go to the fall off, and then change this to sphere. And I gotta get this really far out here, and then scale this up really big. And then now as this comes in, you can see how we're not getting just this, it's hard to see because we're far away, not this straight line, we're getting more of this rounded shape in here. And then we can control the drop off that way. So it'll feel a little bit more organic by doing something more like that. Mm-hmm. If it's one of the shapes, let me see if I think spiral is one. There's a formula one that we won't get into that. There's a random field too that we could play with. Yeah, so we would have to do, let's say, the box or the cylinder field or capsule field, and we could actually add several different fields together and have all of those kind of moving in different ways, right? So it wouldn't be just like one area. It's kind of like this area is going, then this area is going, and so on. So you could add those in there too. There's a lot you can do with just that stuff. Even this here where we have like a sound field, for this assignment it doesn't make sense, but your text that we did, we could have actually linked up an audio file to the text so that it would like scale every time there's like a beat or something, or anything really. And the same thing with the shader, you could have an image kind of driving the animation of what's happening or a video driving the animation of what's happening. Why is everything still gone? You guys broke it now. Let's see. Oh, there's nothing there. That's why, because I disconnected it, but I never deleted it. So let's go there. Let's go here. I'll just put that linear field back on just so we have it for now. Cool. Okay. So all your shapes, keep them really low quality. We want them to be pixelated, not pixelated. We want them to be blocky looking so we can see the edges, so we can see the triangles. This right here is still too smooth. Remember, I have to do that other step of grabbing the cube, going to the Phong, and setting this to 0. That will make it look like each one of those bricks has different faces on them. There it was before, there it is after. So you can see the actual like facets is what we wanted. And then obviously material-wise, bricks. This one probably could use that colorizer and MoGraph color shader. Set that to index. And then giving these different colors here. And we'll drop that onto the bricks there. And now there is going to be, in this case, there's going to be this kind of pattern. I'll go over that another day of how to clean that up a little bit better. So we don't have this like weird patterny type look to it. Yeah, still there. Okay. Cool. So just continue working on your stuff. Your objects are going to be different than mine. As you're building stuff, you may want to look up online to see how you would build something. So if you're looking for a low polygon house, you could find different images out there. Something like this, you could actually have like the roof being one shape that would then fly off, or you could have it being tiles that would then fly off. Okay, it all depends on what you're after. You could too. Yep, I had a student a couple years ago who did like deer. Right, but again, keep them low polygon.
So you know how you already had the shapes of the bricks or something like that?
Yep.
Could you possibly get those same shapes and like kind of like drag and drop them onto something else to make something else different?
Yeah, you could just copy that shape and then however you're going to clone it.
Okay.
Yep. In the castle one, I had the bricks for the castle walls, and then I just copied it and used it for the spiral parts. Okay. And you could even do, you know, these are all stacked. If I had gone into my cloner here and I made less of these, so let's say I made 10, you can see how I can make actual like staircases. With this was a medieval thing, I could have stairs that would wrap around a tower, right? So don't limit yourself. Just kind of like, this is what I want. Let's see how I can get it. And just kind of push yourself in that direction. Cool. Questions? Awesome.